The first incident happened in a small-town middle school in Ohio during the peak of winter. Snow blanketed the streets outside, and the school radiators hissed quietly as students focused on their lessons. It was a regular Wednesday afternoon, just after lunch, when the calm was shattered by the principal's voice crackling over the intercom. Lockdown. This is not a drill. Instantly, everything changed. Teachers sprang into action, turning off lights, locking doors, and ushering students to hide beneath desks and in corners of the classroom. Fear filled the air as whispers died down and a heavy silence fell over the school. In one 8th grade classroom, the students huddled behind a bookshelf near the back wall. Megan, a quiet and observant girl, clutched her backpack tightly, her eyes scanning the room nervously. That's when she saw Ida, a tall shadow moving past the frosted glass of their classroom door. Everyone froze. The shadow lingered for a moment, then slowly turned back toward the door. Someone tried the handle. It jiggled lightly once, then again. The locked door held firm, but what followed was even more disturbing. A soft tapping sound began on the glass pane of the door. Tap, 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 rhythmic, measured. Megan stared in horror. There, behind the glass, was a pale face. It was unfamiliar, definitely not a student or staff member. The face was pressed too close to the window, fogging the glass with each breath. The figure didn't speak. It just stared, unmoving. The taping continued for another 10 seconds. Then, as if satisfied, the figure stepped back and slowly walked away down the hallway. No one moved or made a sound. It felt like hours passed before the voice of a police officer finally called out through the hallway, announcing it was safe. After the lockdown ended, students were sent home early. When police conducted their sweep, they found something disturbing. A muddy footprint outside the entrance nearest the woods. It led right up to the school, but there were no tracks leading away. No tools used to enter. No broken windows or doors. Just one single trail. And it ended at the building. Despite camera footage covering most areas, no one could find a clear image of the intruder. The identity of the persona, if it was a persona, remains unknown. Megan never forgot the face behind the glass. Neither did her classmates, and for years after, no one sat near that door again. In Arizona, during the stifling heat of late May, a high school was wrapping up its final exams. The stress was already high as students were silently scribbling away in their exam rooms, trying to beat the clock. It was just past 11 a.m. when the tranquility was shattered by a deafening bang that echoed through the east wing of the building, followed by the frantic sound of heavy footsteps. Panic took over instantly. Teachers shouted for students to get down and stay quiet. Within seconds, the school's lockdown procedure was initiated. Lights were turned off, doors locked, and students hid behind desks, cabinets, and lab counters, trying to remain as silent as possible. The entire building seemed to be holding its breath. In one of the science labs, a group of juniors found themselves crouched behind long counters, the only illumination coming from the faint sunlight slipping through the shaded windows. Among them was Kyle, a sharp and quiet student who immediately texted his mom, letting her know there was a lockdown and that he loved her just in case. Everything was dead silent for several minutes as only the distant creaks of the school settling and the occasional nervous breath from a student could be heard. Then, something strange happened. The classroom's landline phone, mounted on the wall, suddenly began to ring. The sound jolted everyone. Their teachers' eyes widened. The phone wasn't supposed to be working. It had been physically unplugged earlier that week for maintenance. But the ringing continued, its shrill tone piercing the tense silence of the room. No one moved at first. The teacher, pale and frozen, just stared at it. After a few moments, Kyle made the decision to crawl slowly toward the wall. He reached out, his hand trembling as he moved toward the phone. Just as his fingers brushed the plastic surface of the receiver, the phone stopped ringing. The timing was too precise to be a coincidence. Before anyone could react further, the doorknob began to turn, not violently, just a slow, steady movement, like someone gently testing the lock from the other side. A girl across the room stifled a scream with her hand. No one made a sound. After what felt like an eternity, the doorknob turned back to its original position and the noise stopped. 10 minutes later, the SWAT team stormed the building, clearing each room methodically. When they reached the science lab, The students were escorted out in a tight formation. The hallway, where the footsteps had been heard, was completely empty. The loud bang was later discovered to be a locker that had been rigged with firecrackers by a student trying to cause a distraction and skip finals. But the strangest part remained unexplained, that the phone had no power source, and the maintenance log confirmed it was physically disconnected from the school's network. When Kyle was asked about the incident later, he could only say one thing: it felt like someone was trying to talk to us, like they wanted. In 2007, at an old private boarding school nestled deep in the snowy hills of Vermont, an unexpected blizzard rolled in one evening, faster and harsher than forecasted. By 7 p.m., the entire campus was coated in thick snow, and the temperature dropped sharply. Students had just returned to their dormitories after dinner when the school suddenly went into lockdown. The announcement came over the crackling intercom: "Attention, immediate lockdown. This is not a drill. Please secure all doors and remain silent." No explanation was given. Within minutes, backup generators kicked in, but only faint emergency lighting flickered through the halls. Most of the building remained cloaked in shadows. With phone lines down and the internet patchy due to the storm, communication outside the school was virtually impossible. In the second-floor dorm common room, 5 students gathered nervously in the dim light. Among them was Jackson, a tall, quiet sophomore who had just transferred to the school that year. They blocked the door with chairs and sat close together, listening to the howling wind outside and the creaking of the old building. At first, they joked nervously to ease the tension, trying to convince themselves it was just a precaution. But then, something changed. A faint whispering sound started coming from the air vent above them. At first, they assumed it was wind, but the noise grew clearer, less like air, and more like a voice. The students went silent, staring up at the old vent bolted into the ceiling. The voice became unmistakable. It was saying words, not yelling, not speaking loudly, just quiet, deliberate whispers. "Come find me, broken bar," it repeated, again and again. "Come find me, broken bar." The voice was raspy, childlike. Jackson stood up slowly, staring at the vent. His face turned pale. "That's a broken bar, my brother," he whispered. The others looked at him, confused. "That's my little brother's voice, but he's not even here. He's in New York with my mom." The others exchanged nervous glances. One student, trying to stay rational, said, "Maybe someone's playing a prank." But Jackson shook his head. "He used to say that to me when we played hide and seek." That exact phrase. "No one else knows that." They dragged the chair beneath the vent and stood on it to listen. The whispering continued for another minute before stopping abruptly, like it had never been there at all. Security eventually came by over an hour later, reporting that the lockdown had been triggered by a false alarm. A motion sensor in the basement had detected unexplained movement. When asked about the vent noises, the staff brushed it off as the old ventilation system reacting to the weather. But Jackson couldn't let it go. He later asked the maintenance team about the air vent system and was told something that made his blood run cold. The particular vent above the common room wasn't connected to any other vents or rooms. It had been sealed shut for years. There was no way for sound to travel through it. Jackson never returned to that dorm room again. He completed the year living in an alternate wing of the school. The other students who were there that night, they all reported the same thing years later. They never truly believed it was the wind. The final story took place in California, just last year, in a modern public high school known for its top-tier security system and structured safety protocols. It was mid-October, and the air had a strange stillness to it. The sun was bright, but the sky had a gray hue that made the day feel off. At around 10:15 a.m., during third period, an announcement came over the intercom: "Lockdown in effect. Teachers, initiate full lockdown protocol. This is a drill." At first, no one panicked. Students had grown used to regular drills over the years. Teachers followed the procedure calmly, locking doors, switching off lights, drawing blinds, and moving students away from sight lanes. In room B104, a history class of juniors and seniors gathered in the corner near a filing cabinet. The teacher, Mr. Langston, checked his email to confirm the drill notice. Strangely, there was no internal message from the front office, which usually accompanied these drills. Just as Mr. Langston frowned at his phone, the intercom crackled again, this time with a different voice. It wasn't the principal. It wasn't any staff member. "A low, scratchy whisper filtered through the speakers across the entire school, distorted and strange. "Don't look outside." The message repeated once, then silence. In room B104, confusion rippled through the students. Some laughed nervously, thinking it was part of an enhanced drill. But Mr. Langston's expression had changed. He looked unsettled. He picked up the classroom phone to call the main office, but it gave nothing but dead air. He tried his walkie-talkie and no response. Two students sitting closest to the window, Eric and Jasmine, exchanged a glance. Ignoring the warning, they slowly lifted the edge of the blinds to peek outside into the open courtyard. Eric immediately gasped and dropped the blinds. "There's someone out there," he whispered, his voice cracking. Jasmine backed away quickly. It was as she paused, shaking her head in disbelief. It was a girl. Standing still. She was in some kind of torn-up school uniform, but her fascia, she was staring right at me. Everyone froze. Mr. Langston moved to the window himself, cautiously lifting the blinds just enough to see. But when he looked, the courtyard was empty, completely still. Not a single person, just the fluttering leaves in the silent school grounds. After 10 more minutes of tense silence, the lockdown ended. The principal's voice came back on, clearly shaken. "Students and staff, the lockdown is over. Please resume normal activities. Staff, report any irregularities immediately." Mr. Langston marched straight to the office with Eric and Jasmine. He wanted to know what had just happened, but the principal and vice principal denied ever authorizing a drill, and more chillingly they said the intercom system had not been accessed from the office at all. The internal log showed a message broadcasted at 10:17 a.m., but it came from room B104. Mr. Langston blinked. "That's a broken bar room." "But no one touched the intercom," he said. When the IT team reviewed the surveillance footage of the courtyard from that moment, there was no figure. The cameras showed an empty courtyard the entire time. Yet Eric and Jasmine swore they saw the girl. Her face, her dead eyes locked on theirs. Since then, several students and staff members have reported hearing faint whispers from the intercom speakers late at night during school events. Always the same message: "Don't look outside." And no one ever does.